LJN, the Rainbow of Doom. Most people despise the company and their supposedly crappy games, but I actually enjoy them, and that's why I now don the moniker of the LJN Defender! Never fear, the LJN Defender is here once again to restore honor back to the rainbow. It's been too long since the last substantial, fully original episode, so I'm gonna make up for it by tackling one of the company's most notorious licensed tie-ins. A number of you have asked me to review this, and I believe in giving the people what they want, so it's finally time to take a trip to Toontown with Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit is based upon the film of the same name that took theaters by storm in June 1988. It blended live action and animation to create a magical classic that is just as great today as when I was a kid. Owing to its massive success, several video games were produced, including the Famicom Disk System version, aka Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle, the handheld entry from Capcom, and the infamous LJN NES title, which was released in September 1989. This rare developed 8-bit adaptation loosely follows the plot of the movie in that the titular rabbit and Detective Eddie Valiant have to obtain the missing will in order to prove the rabbit's innocence and free Toontown from the sinister grip of Judge Doom. Of course, this backstory can only be found in the manual, as the card itself is largely devoid of exposition. Pressing start on the main menu transitions directly to the interior of Valiant's office, where we have the option to search for clues or talk with nearby civilians. Both of these tasks are controlled by the A button, and though they may seem tedious and unnecessary at first, we later realize that they are the key to solving the puzzle. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is basically a glorified scavenger hunt with some action elements tossed into the mix. The chief ingredient in this scavenger hunt is the will, and the quest to collect the scattered pieces involves Roger and Eddie conducting a thorough investigation of the various premises across the overworld map of LA and the surrounding areas. The conversations with the civilians that wander the halls play a vital role in these investigations, so be mindful of what they have to say. If they suggest continuing the search, heed their advice, but if they indicate that it's empty, leave the site and repeat the process at the next location. In addition to the will, Valiant uncovers special items which can be activated by pressing the D-pad while holding select and are helpful for getting the detective out of tight binds. For example, there are caves within the forested sections of the map that contain will pieces, but they're guarded by venomous snakes. The snakes will automatically kill Eddie if he gets too close, so they have to be lured away by the rattle, similarly to how the rats are distracted by the cheese. Once the snake is pacified, the document can be retrieved by crossing the chasm with the spring shoes. These are just a few of the power-ups at Valiant's disposal. In fact, I was only able to find a fraction of the total available. Apparently, there's a 6-shooter hiding somewhere in the digital nooks and crannies of this cart, which would have been handy for dealing with certain tricky situations, but I was oblivious to this during my capture session. It almost seems up to random chance whether an item will appear or not. You could follow a guide, but there's no guarantee that they will be in the spots mentioned or shown. Thankfully, it's entirely possible to complete this with a minimal amount of items, but there were circumstances when this random power-up placement annoyed me. The final stretch of the mission centers around Toontown, and there's a brick wall that has to be removed to access it. This is accomplished through the combination of the dynamite and detonator. For some reason that I can't explain, the wall returns if a password is used to save our progress. This wouldn't normally be an issue, but the dynamite suffers from the aforementioned affliction as well, and it can be a pain in the ass to locate a new stick. There's one building in particular that usually contains the dynamite, but the programming sadistically trolled me every once in a while by replacing it with a futile trinket, or even worse, nothing at all. I had to constantly reset the console and input the password in the hopes that it would correct itself, which became quite frustrating. There's always the chance that a specific power-up can be purchased at the store via the wallets located at Valiant's office, but the problem is that only one is on display at a time. Luck may be on our side and the dynamite might be in stock, but the odds of that happening are slim. The only advice I can offer for anyone stuck is to continue to input the password and hope that the missing object shows up, or keep searching until you've combed the entire landscape. After all, this isn't a run-of-the-mill linear adventure. There's a whole world out there to explore and a population's livelihood at stake, so time is of the essence. Fortunately, Benny the Cab is available to aid our heroes at a moment's notice. I recall hearing about how these driving segments were terrible, but I was pleasantly surprised by how smoothly Benny handled. The controls couldn't be simpler. The A button accelerates, left on the D-pad makes him go right, and vice versa. Besides allowing Eddie and Roger to arrive at their destination quicker, Benny offers protection against the other cars, birds of prey, and the dreaded weasels. Judge Doom's lackeys are an ever-looming thorn in the protagonist's sides. They'll crack bad jokes and harass the rabbit if they catch him, as well as engage Eddie in a sidewalk fisticuffs bout. Whether the detective responds with the wrong punchline or his punch isn't up to snuff, failing at either situation results in a lost life accompanied by a beautiful yet hauntingly sad song by David Wise. As much as I love Mr. Wise's soundtrack, it's imperative to retain as many lives as we can for the tough road ahead, so we need to brush up on our comedy and combat skills. In the case of the former, the solutions are really stupid and not funny in the slightest. I didn't even have to refer to a cheat sheet to answer them. Simply hold select and cycle through the options with the D-pad and the correct punchline should become quickly apparent. As for the street fighting, the weasels corner the duo, causing Roger to cling to the meter for safety. The judge's henchmen can be fiercely formidable opponents, and I got my butt handed to me a lot when I began my playthrough. These encounters require a mastery of the charged punch. Mashing the B button will increase the strength meter, and unleashing the blow will wallop the bastards with tenacious force. The charge can be performed while our hero is on the move, so he doesn't have to be a sitting duck for the sake of his offensive maneuvers. It may look embarrassingly goofy, but trust me when I say it's extremely effective. If Eddie and Roger can avoid being killed by the weasels, birds, and other creatures long enough to assemble the will, then it's time for the conclusion in Toontown and the epic Judge Doom battle. Not surprisingly, Toontown is a pretty wacky place filled with wacky residents, and Judge Doom's headquarters is at the northern end. Entry to Doom is blocked by a bat-wielding weasel who is admirably unwavering at his job. I was initially stumped at figuring out how to deal with this unstoppable juggernaut, so I had to refer to a guide to learn that the baseball is required to sneak past him. The framed hare and his wife are hanging from the ceiling of the warehouse as the evil fiend lurks menacingly by the entrance. Judge Doom is without a doubt one of the hardest bosses in the history of video games. Doom dishes out what appear to be eye daggers and punches that can have a devastating effect on our health. Conversely, the judge's meter ticks down mere millimeters with each hit. The boxing gloves, crowbars, and other ranged weapons are worthless, so the only option is to hammer him with charged punches, which honestly don't do that much damage either, while dodging his attacks. This fight is the definition of an endurance test. It took me around 40 minutes to knock Doom down to the ground, and this was after several failed hours of attempts, so my hands were in pain and I cursed Christopher Lloyd for the anguish his virtual avatar put me through. If you managed to get that far, then congrats are in order for surviving this brutal battle. All that remains is to finish the job with the dip cannon below. Upon grabbing the dip cannon, the incapacitated judge stirs and will slaughter Valiant if he doesn't properly equip the device. Be sure to learn from my nervous mistake and press the D-pad while holding select until the dip cannon is armed, then hold B to blast the twisted tyrant out of existence. Toontown and its inhabitants are safe, and our reward for freeing the city is a black screen of text. Come on, Rare, you couldn't at least include a colorful picture to spice it up? That's lame. But since the journey that led to it was quite enjoyable, I guess I'll forgive this disappointing ending. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of the best animated features ever produced, and this unfairly trashed NES licensed tie-in perfectly translates the silver screen experience onto an 8-bit cartridge. The tone is spot on, and the brilliant music from David Wise captures the vibe of the era in chiptune form. I had a ton of fun playing through this, and I appreciated how unique and quirky it is. Rare knocked another one out of the park, and I can't recommend this highly enough. Anyway, that's a wrap on this heavily requested episode of the LJN Defender. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got an appearance in the IUPG court to prepare for. Be sure to come back for that, but until then, this is Matt, the LJN Defender, signing out. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, click any of the boxes on the screen right now and you'll be able to watch a few more of my videos. And if you haven't already, be sure to click that red box right there in the corner and that'll subscribe to the channel and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of my current content. Thanks again, everyone.